can't believe it. I finally ran.
What's good, guys? So today I'm here in Saska Kepa neighborhood, and this is a neighborhood that some people have recommended to me over time. I think people have been recommending it to me for a while, and I finally made it. And it's kind of far from the center, but I figured on such a beautiful sunny day, gorgeous weather, it would be a great neighborhood to explore and talk about something very important. Now today I want to talk about things that I realized that have added value to my life and probably have added value to your life as well. And these are things here in Poland. These are things that, you know, just became apparent after being here. And also, you guys gotta understand that I'm very observant. I'm always observing at my surroundings, right? I lived in a bunch of countries, and I'm always looking at why are such countries better than others? Why is the standard of living better in one place and worse in another? Why is it worse to live in this place, better to live in that place? Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is an interesting experience that I had when I just arrived to Poland from Ukraine. And so I started to go out. I started to go out to Biedronka. I started to shop at Lidl, at all of these stores that are supposed to be very economical, right? They're supposed to have very low prices for common items. And what I eventually realized is that the prices in these stores are less than what I was paying for similar items back in Ukraine. And I asked Marina, and she told me that for a lot of these products, your basic products, cheese, meats, sliced meats, turkey breast, stuff like that, they can be as 50% cheaper, as high as 50% cheaper than the similar products in Ukraine. Obviously, not all the products are 50% cheaper. Some are, 30% cheaper. Some are about the same. But overall, by shopping at these stores, we are saving somewhere around 20 to 30% on our everyday groceries. Now, it's not the case with just Biedronka or Lidl or any of these stores. It applies to services as well. For instance, I realized that the gym that I'm going to, and this is one of the most, really, probably the most advanced gym that I ever went in my life, it costs a little bit more than a gym that I used to frequent in Kiev. Okay, and that gym in Kiev was, your typical Soviet gym. It was a good gym, but it's nowhere at the level of the gym that's here. And it was also on the outskirts of town. It was in an area that, is inhabited by people that are not like super wealthy, right? These are like just common people essentially. And that gym was just a little bit cheaper than the super advanced gym that I am a member here. And also I'm going to be switching to another gym, and that gym I think is going to be even cheaper. And so the prices are going to be, the difference in prices is going to be almost negligible between these two gyms. Now, the more I thought about why that is, why am I paying more money in Ukraine for relatively similar products? Why am I spending more money? Why am I being asked to pay more, where here in Poland I can, pay less and get the same products or services? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that really the whole thing in Ukraine is that it's really a two-tier system. Because on one hand, you have people that are relatively poor, right? They're making maybe the minimal wage, maybe they're making a little bit more. And then on the other hand, you have people that are making a lot of money. And so as a result, businesses, companies, stores, they can essentially price discriminate, meaning that they can sell you, products for super cheap or products that are expensive. And what that means is that if you want just the basic stuff, and in Ukraine, basic stuff means the quality is gonna suffer. Essentially low quality stuff, which is really what it is. Then you're not going to pay a lot of money. Then it's going to be affordable to kind of the general population, to kind of everybody. But if you want something better, you want hummus from Israel, you want high quality cheese, you want imported cheese, you want pasta from Italy, you name your product from country X, you want quality products, you will pay more money. And that means they can set their prices higher. And typically these prices are going to be higher because these goods are essentially luxury goods. But here in Poland, things are evidently different. You have products that are imported from other countries, other maybe EU countries. You have favorable trade agreements from countries outside the EU that allows people here to get products at competitive prices. And as a result, the standard for cheap products or economical products, the products you would find in Biedronka or Lidl, is going to be higher than the equivalent standard in a place like Ukraine or Eastern Europe. It's just a fact of life. Now, another thing that's important to mention is that there are products even here in Poland that we were buying that are actually made here in Poland. I'm not talking about goods that you eat. I'm not talking about consumable goods. I'm talking about things that we bought, for instance, for our cat. They were made in Poland. And these products like toys and various accessories and stuff like that, they were essentially half the price of what you would pay in Ukraine, or even more, right? Because in Ukraine, everything is imported from China, from a bunch of other countries. And once it's imported, it's going to be a lot more expensive. And things like t-shirts, just your normal clothing, a lot of it we found it's made here in Poland. And that's a huge benefit, right? It increases our purchasing power. Now, I'm aware that even here in Poland, there's price discrimination. Price discrimination exists everywhere there is a market economy. So everywhere where the market sets the prices, judging by supply and demand, you're going to have a certain price discrimination. But even with price discrimination here, even with me going to Biedronka and going to an economic store and essentially telling the market, like, listen, I don't need the best of the best. I am comfortable with Biedronka. Biedronka suits me fine. I still come out ahead because the standard here in Poland for products, for quality products, and all the products that we're buying here, the cheeses, the meats, all these products that we've been eating at Biedronka, buying at Lidl, they're quality products as far as I'm concerned. They may not be the very, very best that the world has to offer, but they're enough. And this applies to everywhere, right? This is huge. This is absolutely huge because this increases the standard of living by increasing the population's purchasing power, and that is absolutely awesome. Now, I want to direct your attention to how cool this neighborhood is. Now, this is not even the main street, but you have really nice, developments. You have this grass here, you have this wide sidewalk, you have these side restaurants, these restaurants that are on the street, these street cafes, stuff like that. And then once we reach kind of the main street there, down there, you will see that this is an absolutely amazing neighborhood. And even before, as I was walking here, I saw some really amazing houses, really rich property, really, property that could be at place in an area like Los Angeles or San Diego, really. And this brings me to the next point. And this point I call cities within cities. And so I remember when we just got a notice that there was an apartment available in Warsaw, and this was even before we even have been in Warsaw, right? Even before we knew what Warsaw is like. This was our first trip, me and Marina's. And the listing on the apartment, in the email, the owner of the apartment told us that this apartment is going to be in a particular neighborhood. And she basically said it's going to be 10 minutes by tram from the center. And I immediately thought to myself, I gotta live near the center. It's important for me to live near the center, but still, I thought about it. I'm like, listen, 10 minutes is not a big deal. So what if it's not in the center? 10 minutes is still fairly close, right? By tram, right? It's not bad. It could be worse, essentially. Now, the reason I had that anxiety initially, that you know, that little kind of you know, that little hesitation essentially initially, is because I have learned in Eastern Europe through my experience to always live in the center. That's just how it is, right? You look at a city like Kiev. Kiev has a lot of great neighborhoods, but all of them are in the center, essentially. Yes, there's a couple that are not in the center, but if you want like a good experience, you want a high quality of life, you want to wake up happy, you don't want to wake up depressed, you don't want to wake up like you want to kill somebody, you want to be happy, you want to smile, you want to feel good about things, right? You want to live in the center. That's just how it is. That's the rule of the game. And we're talking about Kiev, the capital where all the money goes. Because in that capital, if you are like 15 minutes away from the center, even like 10 minutes away from the center by metro, your standard of living drops immensely. If you are, 30 minutes away, you're pretty much not going to have any infrastructure around you. It's just going to be like a sleeping neighborhood, right? Like a bedroom neighborhood or whatever you call it. And so as a result, you only want to be in the center, essentially. And with this kind of mindset, I came to Poland. In Gdansk, we lived in the center. In Lublin, we kind of lived in the center. I mean, although it was a little bit, not really center, but it was still good enough. That was kind of my mindset. I have it ingrained in my mind for a long time. And so when I got notice of an apartment 10 minutes away, alarm bells started to go off. But what I didn't know is that here in Warsaw, Warszawa, you have lots of vibrant neighborhoods, and they're kind of like cities within cities. For instance, the neighborhood where I'm living right now, Ochota, that neighborhood is amazing. It took me some time to kind of get used to it. It took us some time to really feel it out. But now, I absolutely love that neighborhood. I mean, I absolutely do. I have my favorite coffee shop. I have my favorite. There's a bunch of restaurants I really like. There's a barber I really like. Over time, I realized that I'm spending more and more time there, and I only go to the center unless it's absolutely necessary. And this is coming from a guy who is like a city guy, who needs to be in the center, who needs to have that energy, that action that's only associated with the center. But this hasn't been limited to just Ochota. Essentially, every neighborhood that we came to, every new neighborhood that we discovered is unique and interesting in its own way. I mean, the other day, we were in Ochota and we were going to another neighborhood. And we were going through some neighborhood, and I'm thinking to myself, what is this? Is this still Ochota? It's gorgeous, beautiful buildings, everything is beautiful. I don't remember the name of that neighborhood, but it was a great neighborhood. And then I looked at one of the plaques on the building, and I realized this is not Ochota anymore. It was some other neighborhood, but still, it was a great neighborhood, stores, shops, great building. And this brings me to the next point. Wealth here in Warsaw spreads along the entire city. You're not just limited in the center, right? In Eastern Europe, and this is on a country scale, this is on a city scale, it's on many different scales. The wealth is typically in the capital, and in the capital, in that main region of the capital. Yeah, sometimes in the city you may have an area like just outside the city where a lot of super rich people live, but that's private, right? That doesn't concern you. It's gated communities. You cannot go there. If we're talking about public spaces that the city built for the people, typically you're going to be limited, right? You're going to be limited. And that was my apprehension, essentially. Am I going to be limited? Am I going to have access to infrastructure and all that? But once I came here, I realized this doesn't apply to a country like Poland, because the wealth spreads everywhere. I can stay in Ochota. I don't need to go to the center. And if I want, maybe to change my scenery, try a new restaurant, then yeah, I will go to the center. But it's not important to me. It's not a requirement. I'm still happy in Ochota. I still feel great in Ochota, because the level of development, the standard of living is the same in Ochota versus another neighborhood, versus the center, versus that. And that is a very, very important point. And you can't really say that about many places. including Eastern Europe, but even beyond Eastern Europe. For instance, if you take a place like New York City, yes, New York City has a lot of these cities within cities, these so-called self-contained neighborhoods. But not all the neighborhoods are like Ojota, right? Like, yes, there are a lot of like Ojota, a lot of neighborhoods that are awesome. But you know, you go to a borough like Brooklyn, and you go away from the center a little bit. You go away from the Manhattan or something, and you're going to be in neighborhoods where you're going to be giving up a standard of living. You're not going to have the same infrastructure, the same everything. Go to Queens, same thing is going to happen. Some neighborhoods may give you that, and that's going to be just like a minority number of neighborhoods. Many other neighborhoods are not going to give you that, right? Go to Staten Island, and there's nothing there, pretty much. I mean, there's just something there, but you're not going to have that same level of infrastructure, that same standard of living as you have in a bunch of other neighborhoods. Go to LA, right? In LA, it's the other way around. You don't want to be in downtown. You want to be outside downtown, right? You want to be in some of these other neighborhoods, because in downtown things are very, very different, right? So that's something to keep in mind. It's not a universal thing. It's not the case with every city where you got your Ojotas there, right? And actually, this new neighborhood that we're going to be moving to, that new apartment that we're going to be moving to, is in a different neighborhood. And I kind of have mixed feelings a little bit, because I got so used to Ojota. I have my barbershop, I got my coffee shop, I got my favorite restaurants, I got my favorite Bedronka that you guys know about, and so I'll have to start over. But what's interesting is that even after we move, I may be returning to that coffee shop, I will definitely be returning to that barber shop, and I may even come back for a couple of restaurants as well. That's how much I like it, and that's how much this Ojota neighborhood, that's nowhere, nothing to do with the center, has become really the center of gravity for me. And that's really, really important. Take a look at these buildings right here, these houses. It's like they're gated there. Look at this right here. Look how awesome that looks, these buildings. They're completely different styles. Each one is different than the next. And so you can kind of pick and choose what you like, but look at this style. Now the next point is very important as well, and if you watch my videos long enough, you may have noticed that I spent a lot of time admiring buildings. I spent a lot of time admiring the architecture. I spent a lot of time, yes, even admiring balconies. I spent a lot of time admiring just things around me, right? The roads, the green, the bushes, the trees, the pedestrian road, the main road, the public infrastructure. And there's a very, very important reason that I do that. Now, one of the reasons I do that is because I don't take it for granted. And because really, in many countries around the world, this is not the case. This is absolutely not the case. A really solid example is Ukraine. Because Ukraine is that perfect example where everything that I'm admiring here in Warsaw and really in the rest of Poland is definitely not the case there. So what do I mean? Well, it's very common in Ukraine to do whatever you want to your apartment, even if it's going to interfere with the overall look of the building. So it's very common for people to close up their balconies and essentially turn their balconies into another closet. It's very common in Ukraine to, instead of like fixing the whole house, just to kind of fix the area around your, around the windows in your apartment, outside your apartment. It's very, very common. And it's also very common to really care about your own apartment and disregard everything else, because the examples that I just gave you means that I'm gonna do something that's perfect for me, something that benefits me without any regard for the apartment. When me and Marina were looking to buy a place in Kiev, we looked at many apartments, and some of the apartments were absolutely spectacular. The remodeling inside them was absolutely amazing, but to get to the apartment meant that we need to take some shady elevator that didn't work half the time. There was some smell coming from the basement area. There were, cigarette butts all over, different, all over the staircases on different floors. And so we essentially had to weigh whether, it was worth it for us to buy, relatively, expensive apartment, but deal with all the other things. And that's really, Eastern Europe in a nutshell. Very, very common in Eastern Europe. And the reason it's like that in Eastern Europe is because there is not a lot of respect for so-called public property, as is the case here in Poland, right? So you have your private property, and that is your apartment, you bought it. It's in a building, and that building is what I call public property. It's not truly public in a sense that it's owned by somebody, but from the point of view of people that live there, they don't own it. Everybody kind of owns it collectively in a sense. And so here in Poland, there's a lot of respect, and there's really ownership of that public property. Ownership is a much better word. Essentially, what that means is that if I'm living in an apartment, I actually care about not only my apartment, but what the entire building looks like, that it's clean, that it's in good condition, that I'm not gonna do something to my apartment that's gonna ruin the overall look and feel of the building, right? That means cleaning the staircases and all that. And this applies everywhere, right? This applies to parks, this applies to sidewalks, this applies to public roads, this applies to everything. That is why you see me admiring a lot of these buildings that I'm sure many people, maybe even you who's watching this, are taking for granted. This ownership of public property is really the definition of a society that's evolving, of a developed society, right? And here in Poland, I'm just amazed how this problem is solved, how it's solved effectively, how it's solved elegantly. Probably a lot of people don't even think about it like that, don't even realize it, but I do care about it, I do realize it. And that is another thing I really, really love about Poland. I love seeing that. I love this infrastructure being in place. And this is a huge win for everybody, for government, for private citizens, for companies, because it increases trade, it increases commerce. It improves your life. It increases the standard of your living, which is the most important thing in any case. Now here I am in another neighborhood, and it's as good as the other one, right? Look at this, look at all these houses. Exactly what I was just talking about. Look at this. Everything is uniform, everything is presentable, everything is beautiful. And now we are almost at the main street. We're just a couple of blocks away from the main street where we are going right now. And here we are on the main street, and look at these outdoor coffee shops, restaurants, cafes. Look at this. Paris menu. Look at that. Is this Beverly Hills or Warsaw or what? And now we are leaving this area here, and I see on Google Maps that there's a park in front of us. So I want to check out this park real quick just to see what it's like. And here we are entering this park, and I believe, I might be wrong, but this could be one of the biggest parks here in Warsaw, if not the biggest actually. Now this next point might be a little bit more subjective, but still it has been what I've seen, it has been our experience, and that is why I feel important to mention it. Now a little background is in order. So when we first got notice that there's an apartment available in Warsaw, I read the listing real quick. I just scanned through it, and really we needed an apartment at that time. We couldn't be picky, right? I couldn't just scan and say, no, I don't like this, I like that. I just scanned it. I saw that it's 10 minutes from the center. I said, let's go, let's do it. And we settled in and we're living. And eventually, like, it just came to me, right? Because I'm not really detail oriented. I realized that this apartment is super modern. It's a small apartment. It's too small for us, but it's very, very modern. The remodeling, everything that's done to it is top notch, okay? I just saw it throughout the course of kind of living there. And this was a revelation for me, because here I am living in a super modern apartment, and yet the owner never said anything. I mean, I think she mentioned in passing that there's some remodeling done or something like that. But really, this apartment at the end of the day is one of the most kind of modern apartments that I may have lived. At least it's up there for sure. Now, one of the reasons why I wasn't taken aback by the apartment, by the quality and the remodeling and the furnishings, and really just how great and tasteful the remodeling was done, was because my experience here in Poland has been the apartments that we've been staying in, all the Airbnbs, including other things that I'm gonna get to in a second, has shown that the apartments here are really top-notch, right? The level, right, the standard is really, really amazing. And I first realized that when we were actually searching for apartments. We opened up OLX, we opened up OLX Poland, and we saw a lot of really, really modern looking apartments. And granted, I am coming from Eastern Europe, where a modern apartment is, it leaves a lot to be desired, okay? And so I'm expecting something similar here. Well, I'm expecting something better, of course, but I never expected this high level of kind of quality, this high standard of kind of the apartments. Now, another thing that's really interesting is that when we were deciding whether to move to Portugal or stay in Poland, this was a big decision because I speak Portuguese. It would have been infinitely easier probably in Portugal because of the language. We pulled up OLX Portugal, and we were just confused at what we saw. There were some apartments that were relatively nice, but there were lots of apartments that were like this kind of granny's den, right? Really, not modern apartments at all. It was all over the place. It was really all over the map. My first thought was that, hey, number one, we probably wouldn't be able to afford these nicer apartments. Number two, there's just not going to be any available. It's not even a question of money at the time. There were just like a few, right? There were like a few really nice apartments. And at that point, I'm thinking to myself, it's just becoming an evident thing that, here in Poland, the standard of apartments is a lot better. And obviously this includes all the Airbnbs we were staying in. That first Airbnb in Lublin was very, very modern. It was amazing. And when you think about what it really means, right, this is very, very important. Because in Ukraine, you kind of have three levels of apartments, okay? And I'll talk about the US too in a little bit, but first Ukraine. You have your babushka's apartments, right, so to speak, babcha apartments, right? These are like, your old Soviet apartments, no remodeling, nothing like that, with the quintessential rug on the wall, right? Then you kind of have this middle ground, right, where it's kind of remodeled. It's not like super modern, but it's not like babushka's apartment. And then you have that next tier, which is called Euro Remont. It's called Euro Remont, which means European type level of remodeling. And that essentially means that if you get that apartment and they say it's Euro remodeling, that apartment is going to command a premium. It's a special case. It's like what I talked about, going to a better store to buy your Dutch Gouda or your Italian pasta or your, whatever, you name it, some other like Spanish, some Spanish manchego cheese, right? It's the same thing with apartments. And that means that in a country like Ukraine, you want a nice apartment where what it seems to me here in Poland is kind of taken for granted. Like the apartment I'm living now is, it's above and beyond, like in terms of quality, in terms of standards, but that apartment is going to command a huge premium in Ukraine. Now in the US, things are a little bit more complicated. You have all kinds of apartments. You have your apartment with no furniture. Typically apartments in the US are rented without furniture. And you have apartments in old buildings. You have apartments in newer buildings. You have apartments in buildings in between. There's really no standard. kind of like in Ukraine, right? In the US, you want like a really nice apartment, it's gonna command a premium, right? It's gonna be more expensive because they can attach a label to it. They can say, well, this is a newly remodeled apartment. It's, you know, whatever. It's best of the best furniture, best this, best that. Whereas in Ukraine, they can say this is Euro remont. It's the same thing. Now, I've also lived in Denmark. I lived in Copenhagen. I lived in a nice apartment there, which was kind of a standard apartment, you know, by Scandinavian norms. And I can safely say the apartment that we're living right now, the apartment that we're going to be moving to, are at the same level, and which is like pretty much the highest compliment you can give to your dwelling, right? Because in my view, like Scandinavian, it's high quality, right? It's tastefully done, it's nice style, it's you know, it's great to live in. And so as a result, from kind of what we have seen, what we have experienced, I am led to say that the standard that you're getting with the apartments, you know, your dwellings, your, you know, the price that you're paying for it, your purchasing power is a lot higher than, you know, your similar apartment in Ukraine, your similar apartment definitely in New York and many other cities in US. It's just high. And that is something I did not expect. And this is a very, very surprising and impressive element here in Poland as well. Oh, look at that. There's even like a little lake here as well. Pretty awesome. I didn't even know about it. Pretty nice. Look at that. Now, last but definitely not least, I want to talk about a very, very important point here as well. And this point is probably going to be more subjective than others, but this is something that I felt as a result of living in various places, kind of with boots on the ground. And that is the subject of confidence. Now, when I say confidence, I'm not talking about your confidence or my confidence. I am talking about the collective confidence of the individuals in a particular countries. Because the fact of the matter is that there are some places where the collective confidence is fairly high. There are some places where the collective confidence is fairly low. There are some places where the collective confidence is rising. Some places it's falling. So just to give you an example, a place like the US, the confidence is high. People are proud to be American. You go to the US, there's progress, there's prosperity. People are working on problems, they're solving problems, they're optimistic, they are looking towards tomorrow, they feel great, they feel stable. Ultimately, they are confident of who they are, but also, you know, who they are as a part of the bigger country, okay? Another really good example is Armenia, okay? I went to Armenia with Marina. We went to Armenia last year, so this was exactly a year ago, and we loved it. And we noticed that the confidence of Armenians in Armenia is fairly high. They love their country, they love to tell you about it, they love to, you know, learn about you. I had tons of comments on videos on YouTube, people recommending places, people suggesting. We were walking around, you know, landmarks, you know, people stopped us and explained to us what we were looking at. The bottom line is that people were super proud of their country. They were also returning. There were, you know, expats returning back to Armenia and starting businesses. And there's just a lot of confidence, a lot of praise, and this is very, very important. On the other hand, a country like Ukraine, I would say that the confidence is fairly low. And obviously this is my subjective opinion, and this was before the war. I don't know how it is now. I haven't been back, but before the war, there was a lot of feeling in the air that we should immigrate to other places, we should move somewhere. There was even a big scandal in the parliament where one of the people in the parliament was writing a message to another person where she said, like, you know, we need to move out, you know, things are not going very, very well in this country. So Ukraine is a place where unfortunately the confidence is not very high. And, you know, hopefully that will improve in the next, you know, 10, 20 years. Now, what I noticed here in Poland is that the confidence is fairly high. And I am seeing that from all sides, right? The first example is, you know, people are leaving lots of comments. They're suggesting about a place. You know, you would not be recommending various things to do. You would not be telling, you know, a foreigner or a tourist to go visit this place, to learn about the history, to learn about the culture. You would not be helping with the language if you did not believe in your country. So that's a big plus right there. Another thing I noticed here in Poland is that people that are living abroad, maybe in the US, maybe in a city like New York, they come to Poland for a vacation, they visit, they check it out. Maybe they don't move back, right? They don't repatriate, but they spend some time here, they check it out, they love it here, and then they go back to where they're living. And maybe these visits increase with frequency. One of the biggest factors when it comes to confidence is that people are returning permanently to Poland. Maybe they lived elsewhere, maybe they lived in New York, maybe they lived in other EU countries, maybe they lived wherever, but they decided, okay, I want to go back. I want to go back to my homeland. This is something I also noticed in Armenia, where confidence is obviously very, very high. And this is something I have never seen in Ukraine. The only people really that may move to Ukraine or have moved to Ukraine are essentially people that have high-level connections to government or big companies. But your private citizens, such as myself or maybe yourself, I have never seen these types of people move back to Ukraine in order to start their new life. Now, like I said, confidence is a very, very subjective thing. And this is something that I noticed as a result of living in places, of talking to people, of interacting with people. This is something that you feel on the ground. It's very, very hard to quantify it. But when you spend enough time in the country, when you live in various countries, when you travel to various countries, confidence is going to be one of those things that's going to be fairly hard to ignore. And here in Poland, like I said, confidence is very, very high. People are super proud of their country. People are proud of their history. People are proud of being Polish. And that's another factor that contributes to kind of the overall feel of the country. It contributes to the overall prosperity of the country. It contributes to the positive outlook and the development of the country. Because let's face it, if you're not confident in your country, if you do not believe your country is on the right path, if you do not believe your country is improving and will get better, then what kind of future does the country have? How is it going to improve if nobody believes in that country, right? Because at the end of the day, the future of the country is the collective belief of the individuals who are living there or want to live there and want to improve it. And so if you combine everything that I talked about today, your ability to buy goods without spending an arm and a leg, quality goods, the city within a city, the fact that the wealth is not concentrated right in the center where it kind of spreads around, the public property ownership, where people can come together and maintain something that nobody individually owns, where there's an understanding that even though I do not own this building, I am a member of it, I live there, and I need to make sure it stays presentable, because that's going to increase the value of my own apartment as well as everybody else's. The fact that you can get a fairly high quality apartment with modern furnishing for a very, very competitive price, the fact that it's the standard here from what we have seen is crucial as well. And last but not least, let's not forget about confidence, the fact that people are crazy about this country, that people love this country, that people cannot tell me enough, that I get tons and tons of emails constantly about go here, go there, go to the city, show us this city. And yes, each of these factors is super important, all on its own, every single one of them. But really the maximum benefit is when you combine all of these things together. Because when you do, you realize that you have a very formidable, first-rate, and ultimately a very comfortable society, a very comfortable country to live in, that you simply do not get when a lot of these factors are absent, as is the case in many other countries. And all of this results in an ability for an individual to flourish and reach their maximum potential. Look at this cool building, guys. Completely different. This right here looks like a really cool development, right? All modern, clean. Could have been built yesterday, right? Look at this. You got a little area here. huge balcony. It's probably not my style of balconies,